Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Walkative Melbourne, led by Jacqueline Felsted. By us, I mean me, Jasper Joseph Lester, Head of Programme for Sculpture at the Royal College of Art in London, and Alistair Chan and Pat Wong, this year's co-presidents of the RCA's Walkative Society. Walkative Melbourne is the latest in a series of online walks since summer 2020 that has encompassed Stockholm, Berlin, Cape Town, Toronto, the Marshall Islands, Santiago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Jacqueline Felsted is a Melbourne-based artist who between 2017 and 2018 was an associate researcher in sculpture at the RCA. Amongst other influences, her work is informed by psychogeography and hauntology. See Mark Fisher's Ghosts of My Life if you want more discussion of this way of thinking and seeing. She is particularly interested in things that are difficult to map three-dimensionally, such as an hour of someone's time or spaces that don't exist anymore. She is accompanied on her walk today by Daniela Ruffino, with whom she shares a studio space. As you will see from the poster and description, this is a walk in a neighbourhood of Melbourne, which is the location for the Mantra Hotel, temporary home, or perhaps prison, until very recently for refugees from Manus Island, Papua New Guinea. Jacqueline welcomes questions and observations as she walks. You can put these into the chat box and either Jasper or I will mention them, or you can comment directly at the end of the walk, which will take about 45 to 48 minutes. Over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you everyone for having us. So the way that we start things is we usually start with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri as the traditional owners of this country, paying tribute to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and giving respect to all elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here at this event. So we are on a walk the Mantra Hotel. The Mantra Hotel is called an alternate place of detention. It's been a prison to over 60 men who've been in indefinite detention for 8 years. First on Manus Island, and then they came here for medical attention under a law called Medevac, which meant that 2 doctors could send people in indefinite detention to Australia for care. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk to the Mantra Hotel from here, and at the same time it's accompanied by video footage which was taken during the time when the refugees were here at the Mantra. The first is video of this walk during the day. The next is video taken on the grounds of the Mantra without permission. Then there's footage from Human Rights Day where people inside the Mantra were able to give speeches outside through their phones on speakers. And the last bit of footage is after the refugees were taken from here to another hotel called the Park Hotel, which just happened maybe December the 30th. So I'll put it over to Alistair to start playing the footage and we'll talk to it as we go through. Excellent, so we're going to start walking. So today is the outcome of a number of walks. So the Mantra Hotel in Preston. It's the Mantra Hotel's in the suburb of Preston. It's about 10 kilometres out of the city. It's a strange place. It used to be a hospital, and inside it there's a swimming pool that nurses used to use for exercise in the 1950s. Since then, it's become first a hotel under ridges, and then currently it's owned by Mantra. So the Mantra Hotel is what the government calls an alternative place of detention. It's not listed on any government website as a place of detention either. The reason that we know that there have been refugees in prison in the Mantra has been through people visiting and through human rights organisations. So I'd like to give a little bit of history as to how it is we end up in a situation where we have over 60 people within the 5 kilometre radius that we could walk during COVID imprisoned in a hotel. So Australia started having offshore detention a long time ago under the Howard government, and then the offshore detention centres were then all shut. Then in 2013, our Prime Minister at the time, Kevin Rudd, reopened them and announced that any person who came to Australia seeking asylum by boat would never be given asylum. They'd be taken offshore and would never be granted permission to come here. This was in response to a number of things. Very conservative Australian politics and government, and also influx of boats whereby people were smuggled in through Indonesia into Australia. Part of the problem with this is that there were around 1,200 deaths because these boats were so unsafe. And since detention centres has been shut, the number of boats coming to Australia from Indonesia greatly increased. So the argument has been that the reason for keeping people in indefinite detention is as a deterrent to stop people wanting to come to Australia by boat. The other thing is that the way that we think of refugees in Australia is different to other countries, because here, if you're a refugee and you come here, you're actually not allowed to work. So we don't have the same respect for the input of new arrivals to the country. The other thing we don't have in Australia is any kind of declaration of human rights. So some facts. 3,127 people have been put in Australia's offshore detention centres since they were first reopened in 2013. They were from Iran, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Lebanon, and Sudan, all are stateless. Officially, their options since have been to resettle in the US, go back to PNG, which there's Nauru and Manus Island, which are the 2 offshore detention centres, or to go home. In fact, PNG actually aren't taking anyone back. So people who have left have either returned to their countries or have been resettled in other countries. But there's hundreds of people still offshore in Nauru and PNG or in Australia. In September 2013, Tony Abbott becomes Prime Minister, and there's a Liberal Conservative coalition whose slogan is "Stop the Boat." and they start using an operation called Sovereign Borders to use the Australian Defence Force to stop boats from reaching Australia. In 2014, protests on Manus Island Detention Centre left one person dead and 77 people injured. The person who died was beaten by 2 security guards that have since been convicted. At this time, Amnesty International says that the centres, offshore centres, need to close. The gentleman's name is Reza Barati. He's 24, he's from Iran. The refugees inside the mantra include people who carried his body to the gate of Mantra, sorry, to the gate of Manus Island. So the people in indefinite detention include 85 children at least who are in Nauru at this particular point in time when this happens. In August 2014, the last detention seekers are transferred to Nauru. So the people that we're talking about have come to Australia in the period 2013 to 2014 and are still in indefinite detention. There's been a number of suicides of people who've been in detention, and there have also been people who have needed medical treatment and been unable to get it, or have been sent to Australia for medical treatment too late. So that 13 deaths in all have been recorded of refugees in our care. In September 2014, the Australian government came to an agreement with Cambodia, of all places, to send people in indefinite detention. 7 people went. Australia also tried to come to a similar arrangement with Malaysia, but it was deemed unlawful because they're not signatory to any kind of convention for the protection of refugees. New Zealand's offered to take 150 people per year, but the Australian government has said no. The US deal was in 2016, and through that, 1,200 refugees have been resettled. So far, 800 people have returned home, especially after 2014, when it became clear that conditions in Manus Island and Nauru weren't improving. There's also been dozens of verified cases of abuse, including sexual abuse, especially on Nauru. And this is, we're now just getting to the mantra. So the video.
Jacqueline, you're a little bit soft.
Okay, I'm speaking up now.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is the mantra. So the refugees have been on the 3rd floor of this building. To change piece of paper. So, there's a report in 2015 which confirms cases of sexual abuse in Nauru. And in 2015, the Australian Border Enforcement Act prohibits people who work in detention centres as professionals from reporting on what goes on inside. There's also a stop on media from publishing anything that's not already been okayed. The reason I think it was given was because, sorry, can you hear me with the wind? It's very bad. The reason given was to protect the privacy of the people who were detained. In 2000, Um, in 2016, PNG Supreme Court proceeded to close down Manus Island. In 2017, when Manus Island was shut, there were still hundreds of people there, 400 people, without food or water or electricity. I was talking to a journalist whose name is Michael Green. He actually got smuggled into at the time, and he said that the men inside, you can't hear from the wind. Sorry. He said that the men inside and people who lived in PNG organised to get what food and water they could. They dug for wells. They distributed what resources they had by country. Each country had a person who was a representative. This wonderful way of organising so that everyone would be okay. A number of people were evacuated, needing medical care. So in 2017, we have a law called Medevac. I'll just touch the video footage for a second. So this is going inside the matcha to ask about getting married. There's a lot of ads out the front for wedding receptions, and the process was, and the person at the counter was quite bewildered and seemed more likely to be immigration security.
Are you filming surreptitiously?
Yes. Yeah, so I have a camera with me, however, it's around my neck, not at my head. So
it's interesting that the slogan is break free.
It's surreptitiously. So this is some outside spaces, some outside, yes. So this is some logos that says matcha break free. There's also a new basketball court and things like that on site, none of which really was able to be used. People here were allowed 1 hour of gym. They also were already in distress in 2019, which was the last time that the Australian Human Rights Commission was able to actually access inside the Matcha Hotel. And the reason given for not being able to access it since was COVID. So Medevac legislation said that if 2 doctors said it was necessary, people could be taken to Australia for treatment. So 192 people left Manus and Nauru to come to Australia for treatment, and that law was then repealed a few months later, which left these people in limbo in Australia. So at the moment, they're in detention centre called MITA, which is Melbourne Immigration Detention Centre. They're in Brisbane in a hotel like the Matcha, and until last week, well, now they're also in a park hotel. So when COVID starts, we've got this situation where there's these men sharing rooms in small spaces without any possibility of isolating from each other or of social distancing. There's 1 guard per 2 people on the floor. Guards can enter rooms at any time. If anyone is taken for medical treatment, they're taken in handcuffs. And there was the question as to whether or not any of the medical treatment was given. A lot of it involved therapy for trauma from being in imprisonment in the first place. So at the moment, most of the people from the Matcha were taken to the Park Hotel have been given temporary bridging visas, which just happened last week. 20 people left, I think, on Wednesday, and 24 are leaving on Thursday coming. Then they have 3 weeks of accommodation. They've given permission to work, and the idea is still that they need to go elsewhere and not settle in Australia. But after that, they don't get any government support at all. And that still leaves other people in detention across Australia and other places, as well as I think 290 people in offshore detention on Manus and Nauru. So the interesting thing about having people at the mantra is that usually these conversations don't take place in Australia because you can't see it. Everyone knows what's going on, but it's an added point of important discussion to be driving past places like the mantra every day. So now that the refugees are no longer at the mantra, it's important to still talk about the fact that they were here, because the problem of indefinite detention still affects hundreds and hundreds of people. Okay, now which video are we up to? I think that might be the end of the first video.
Yes, it's just finished, Jacqueline.
Excellent. We can go to the second one. The second one's just to give a bit of context as well. It's from Human Rights Day. And it has
all your favor and goodness. I think. Yeah. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we stand today. The Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We recognize that sovereignty was never ceded and that we are on stolen land. I would like to pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present and emerging. Special thanks to my dearest sister Lydia Thorpe for her strong voice and support. I hope one day to be free and learn more about your beautiful culture. On International Human Rights Day, I would like to acknowledge that Indigenous rights and refugee rights are inherently linked. There is a fight for justice and liberation of all people. I would also like to express my heartfelt thanks to all who helped us to defeat the changes to the Migration Act that was proposed by Peter Dutton and Alan Tudge. Those changes would have given official additional powers to search us. It would seen our mobile phones confiscated and inevitably lead to further human rights breaches against all of us. This is critical because our phones are a lifeline in detention. And the strength of our resistance depends on our ability to remain in contact with our friends and family. The architects of this cruel bill and those who passed it in the lower house of the government wanted to disconnect us from the world. But you didn't let them. You helped us to remain connected with our loved ones. This is not a small victory. It is significant. You showed us that our voices have been heard. And you showed us that there are people who care about us. You proved that the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. Despite the COVID-19 restrictions, we see every day that there are people protesting for us and fighting for our freedom. Our suffering gives these politicians power. They do not care about human rights, the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every single one of us. You, the people, you can continue to campaign for change. You can continue to fight for us. We need to be united like a family, like a team. The defense of our rights is a human responsibility. It is only the voice of humanity that will see the innocent people who have been indefinitely detained finally be free. And the voice of humanity is built by thousands of people lending their voice to a common cause. That is when the uproar grows too loud to ignore. We will not succeed unless we continue this together. There's a powerful quote from Eleanor Roosevelt about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Where all, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet, neighborhood they live in, their school or college they attend, the factory, farm, or office where they work. You understand this in your heart, and it is people like you. It is people like you who will change the world.
I thought when I went to Port Moresby that out of sight, out of mind was the reason this was going on. And I believed at that time that if we told the stories here in Australia, this would end. And yet today in 2020, these guys are on our soil. They're here in the Mantra, they're in Kangaroo Point, and they're in Darwin. And they're locked up in our cities, they're locked up in front of us. They're in front of our faces. No Australian can say any longer that we don't know. We know.
I would like to acknowledge the land of Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, stolen land, and I pay my respect to indigenous people, past, present, and future. I speak to you from Maita on Immigration Torture Center. 8 months ago, ADF and circle managers forcibly removed me from the Mantra on Bell Street, Preston, to Maita in Rose Meadows, from prison to another. They confiscated my art supplies and have continued this cruelty by denying me my basic human rights. I would like to thank you all very much for taking the time today to come out on the street and take action for our rights and our freedom. I would like to thank to my sister Lydia Thorpe. I wish she was there. And thanks to the legendary Craig Foster and everyone for all your support, love and care. Today is my day. It is your day. It is everyone's day. A day when we celebrate and reflect on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human rights mean freedom, dignity, equality, peace, and justice. Human rights is for children, women, men, black and white, and doesn't matter what color and race are you. We know that humanity, kindness, and compassion are not ideals that the federal government has practiced ideologues the federal government. When it comes to the rights of refugees who have been denied it for over 7 years, the language they understand is the language of power and wealth. We need to expose their corrupt contracts and protest against the companies that make money from our misery and imprisonment. I won't let them bury me alive, as I know I have the right to stand and fight for my peace and freedom. They cannot destroy me when I have you walking beside me in this battle. We all need to be united. We can succeed when we are united. You can fight for freedom with the greatest strength if you are united. You must do this peacefully. Do not use violence in our name, because violence is what we are fighting against. And I also invite you to stream of a new music video and song, The Smiling Boy, which is premiered on my birthday, Friday 11th December, on my YouTube channel, Farhad Bandish. I would like to ask you all repeat after me. Resistance brings life. Resistance brings freedom.
Resistance brings freedom.
Resistance is life.
Resistance is life.
Resistance is freedom.
Resistance is freedom.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hello. It was unusual time. I haven't come for a while because of COVID-19. Now we come back to normal. That's good. Thanks God. Yeah, I have something to say today, especially Human Rights Days, because I never expect I'm gonna see them in front of me on the window. My friend is after it's just a long time for 7 years. Yeah, it just my heart is broken. I don't have any words today, really. My word is maybe it's my tears. I tried to come and to just say something, but it just I don't know how to explain. I wish it's also it's Christmas coming soon. Just remind me first. I was in detention when he passed away on Christmas too. I don't have words today. Just my tears, my word. How I was broken. I never thought I'm gonna see them in front of me on the windows. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sometimes I feel as if we are fish inside an aquarium. We exist in this small enclosure where we are watched constantly. We can see the outside world, but we cannot touch it. We cannot live in it. We can only observe it.
Thank you. I was going to talk to the footage.
Jackie, can you hear?
Yes.
You're very, very
Yes.
faint.
Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me any better? If I talk like...
Yeah, a bit better.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see the chat box. Are you there, Jackie?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
You're very faint, but maybe that's the best it can be.
Alistair, just wondering if you share the next video with the sound off on your computer so you're not sharing the sound.
Yep, sure.
Perhaps this might be better. Is that any better now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, so this is actually the visit to the inside of the Matra Hotel. So there's a few things to say about it. One is that it's different to the normal kind of place that we think of as a place of detention. Foucault had this idea of a panopticon, where there's a central tower, and the person inside the tower, you don't know if they're watching or not. And so what happens is you change your behavior thinking that you're always watched. This is more of a Kafkaesque kind of space. Maybe like in a story of his The Burrow, there's a mole type character who makes traps and mazes. And here there's security cameras and the like, but you really don't know what behavior is okay and what's not, even though it's a hotel. So I went and stayed at the Matra at the same time as the gentlemen were imprisoned on the 3rd floor with my children, and looking at how the place manages to function as both a hotel and a prison at the same time. Because normally in a hotel, you can walk wherever you want. And here you're not told not to walk anywhere. It's just the feeling that you're not supposed to. So while the hotels are pretty much shut during COVID because there's no travellers coming to Melbourne, and you need to understand Melbourne has the highest rate of COVID out of Australia, which isn't at all high by standards over there, but our response was to completely shut down. So until we got down to 0 cases. So protest was illegal, and no one was allowed outside of 5 kilometres out of their zone, and there was absolutely no way for this massive hotel, which is actually, this is just one of 2 buildings to make money. What they've been doing is the refugees are imprisoned on the 3rd floor, making money out of that, but every other floor, apart from 2 floors at the top, have been completely redeveloped, completely gutted. The description of what was happening for the hotel staff was that you just won't believe how amazing it's going to look after we've finished here. So we tried to map the area that the refugees were in response to some of what was said on Human Rights Day. The idea that the view that you can see is like being in a fish tank, and from up on that floor you can see the city and everything that you can't be part of. And then there's the floor below them, which they can't see what it is, but it's actually a whole lot of redeveloped hotel rooms getting ready to become something else. So this is my daughter walking. This is still supposed to be a family hotel, but at the same time, no one actually stays here. It's also a place where people have been able to be sent for emergency social housing. So the Matra has kind of a strange, is quite strange. It has penthouses, and at the same time, housing for people that I believe have also been recently released from jail and all sorts. So we're walking around trying to find our way, having followed the map. And I think hopefully you saw the card earlier on, that the card that you use to get into the Matra, the little byline says to recognise your potential, which that, as well as the break free, seems really problematic. So the way that we find our way through is by walking. And that's the great thing about Walkative, is that this is actually somewhere where no one really gets to walk or talk, and it's nice to do this and talk to this footage.
Jacqueline, I was going to
Yes.
ask about guests. So, clearly you booked in as a guest, but is it that people are not booking rooms in the mantra because of the furore around the third floor?
Yes, they're not. And at the same time, I think they've actually reduced the number of rooms available. So there's actually not many rooms that can be booked. And some of them, yes, so people don't book here, although they can. The thing about transferring the refugees to the Park Hotel is the Park Hotel was already shut. It was shut in September. So there's no way of having people enter the building at all. So eventually what we end up doing here is we go down fire escapes to try and find our way around the perimeter of the third floor, which we'll get to in a second. Also have 3D models of some of the spaces. So this is my daughter looking out over this area here where the asylum seekers were talking from before. Unfortunately, this particular door, when we close it, doesn't actually open again, and so we have a bit of a conundrum. How many people are living in the building at the moment? I don't know. I don't think many, because the people have left the third floor, and once they left, all their beds were thrown out on the street. So I think there's already people passing over. So maybe so there's 2 floors, the 5th and 6th floor. If a floor takes 60 people, then maybe there's 120. Probably a lot less. So during COVID, there was a lot of talk around the mantra, but a lot of difficulty in actually protesting out the front because it was illegal. Been a number of people have been arrested. When the buses left the mantra, there were protests out the front, and people involved included friends and their daughter, who's 16. This is the third floor here, with the security inside. And there's a strange feeling that we shouldn't be where we are, but it's also that other strange thing of being a paid guest, and then the doors don't appear to open again. So it's my friend's daughter's first experience of actually being at a protest and being pushed, and it was quite a surprise and a shock that this is how conversations and protests take place, and that this is what happens with police. It's quite a rabbit warren. During COVID, there was one security guard who it turned out was positive, and so there was additional fear for the people on the third floor as well. If anyone's interested, during August, of look down, there is a fabulous thing online called What Are You Doing Today, which is an art project put on in conjunction with an organisation called Liquid Architecture. where the people inside were able to record 20 minutes of their day. And every day, if you signed up, you got a call, you got to listen to the 20 minutes of just what was going on inside. This is the floor below. Yes, we stayed at the hotel for 2 nights. No, we stayed for 1 night. So all the wallpaper on the second floor is actually based on artist's impression of Preston Town Hall. So the match was in Preston. So there's this weird wallpapering over with an artist's impression of a democratic institution. But it's really easy to get lost. And that's where the idea of some kind of burrow and tunnels comes in.
Is it a maze or a labyrinth?
It's definitely something of the sort, because we got quite lost trying to find a way out to seem perhaps more like a labyrinth. So originally the building was a hospital, and people who were born here and had their stomachs pumped here. My friend's brother had chewing gum taken out of his butt here. In the intervening period between being a hospital and a hotel, there were raves here. There was a massive morgue here.
How old is the building?
I'm not sure. Danny, do you have any idea? I don't know. It was definitely a functioning hotel in the 1950s. By our standards, that's old. It's a bit like a parallel world. So it opened as a hospital in 1958. Yes.
Jacqueline, you're quite quiet again.
Oh, yes, I was looking at the chart. It feels more like a prison than anything, or a place where you shouldn't be walking around. Yeah, Jasper's definitely different lives on different floors. And that was the 3rd floor door again. So the other side of that door as well is the prison. And it really is being completely whitewashed over. So there's this idea of spaces and trauma, and I know people talk about the idea of hauntology a lot, but there's this idea that as well as something having a presence, what's not there anymore also has a presence, and it sort of needs to be answered to. And so the fact of it acting as a prison, and the knowledge that this is going on, affects every part of the building, perhaps. That's how I like to think of it.
Got a strange question, but I always remember hotels have a sort of hotel smell. Does this have a kind of that lobby room smell, or would it?
It does down the bottom, but actually mostly everything smells like disinfectant. especially because of COVID as well, so it's a bit different. There's also a lot of noise. Except this is all shot, well, apparently there's normally noise. So part of being able to walk around the building this freely was booking the room for a Sunday night. Here, everyone gets paid, well, mostly people get paid penalty rates on Sunday nights. So you have the least amount of staff. There's this is the last section of so we're on the top floor at the moment. There's a shut area which is supposed to give you a little rooftop garden to outside, which is complete with artificial grass. Reminds me of The Shining.
It's hard to escape that comparison, isn't it?
It is, especially with the hallways.
What is the arrangement for the refugees when at meal times? Would they eat together, or would food be brought to them?
They eat together. So there's actually apparently an underground section. So I've spoken. Oh yes, and I'm speaking from outside the mansion right now. So the car park that you saw in the first video, what happens is if you want to visit someone, firstly, when you apply online, there's a way of applying to the mantra. You just have to add it in as a byline. I want to go to the mantra. Then when you get here, you're told to stand in the car park. You're left there for a moderate amount of time. And then a guard meets you at the car park. And then they take you down all the car park floors, kind of labyrinths, and then down corridors underground until you get to a room. And in that room, there's security guards and a table tennis table and the person that you're supposed to visit. If that person wants to go to the toilet, then 2 guards, and have to be of the same sex, accompany them to the toilet, which is just 6 meters away, a door in the same room. The thing is that as well as it making it even more of a labyrinth, from what I can tell, and other people who've been here can tell, because I've spoken to 2 people who've had the experience of visiting people in this manner, you could probably just take some stairs straight down to that floor. There's no reason to go the elaborate corridors and car parks to get down there.
I'm actually just being reminded of Ballard, High Rise.
Where are all the people? We only saw one person. It does have the impression of not really being used, but it's hard to tell what's going on behind all the doors. There was also a case a few years ago previously. This was the Ridges Hotel, and there was a woman who was kept here against her will. A backpacker was kept for several weeks by 2 people who kidnapped her. So all in all, the whole site already has a very, very dark history even before this. Yes, thanks, Pat. And this is the view of outside, so from the floor above. So it's probably what the gentleman see from the floor below.
Have you seen Jasper's question about the rate?
Yes, the rate's exorbitant. It was $250 a night, which by our standards, well, so maybe in pounds, that's I think we're double, so maybe £120. And by our standards for a hotel quite far from town, it's quite a disincentive to stay. So you can see Panch Community Health is across the way, and it has a big sign out the front saying refugees welcome here, that's been there for the duration, that can be seen by anyone on the third floor. This is running around on a Monday morning where everything's kind of started, and there's people in the building running around, and this is the view from those windows, the last of which you can see the city itself.
I think Jasper likes the art.
Good. There's a strange circumstance. After the first time Audrey and I walked around, the hotel seemed to be followed. There was a gentleman in the lift who was looking at us strangely and appeared in a number of spots where we weren't expecting to see him. That last bit is the view of the city. When we left, we pressed the button on the third floor in the lift, and 4 people came out to stop us from entering, which we had no intention of entering, but also we were a bit confused, and Audrey did make a move to walk and did put her feet on the third floor, and then we were shuffled back in and on our way. So I think we are at an hour now, so perhaps we won't show the last video, which is fine, that's exactly what happens in it, and it's just walking through after everyone who's here has left. So now hopefully it's okay, we're not going to Alistair, we'll stop with this one.
Does this one have sound, Jacqueline, or?
This one does have sound, but I'm worried that it's been an hour already.
Well, I think we're all right.
Okay, cool. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll play this
with
with sound.
See
then.
daylight starting.
Oh, wow. There's another Mark Fisher reference, the weird and the eerie.
The weird and the eerie. Yes. Mark Fisher's amazing. So this is our hotel. I can't hear the sound.
I can hear it.
They were wondering at the amazing view and the police downstairs. This is going into the third floor. So just okay, thank you. Pictures on my camera and getting out on the ground floor. That was the first floor, so we did 3, 1 ground. Hi. This is leaving hotel reception. This is Monday when it's all getting ready and busy and people are staying here. Hi. The alarm goes off, which is kind of fitting. Christmas decorations. These are parts that I wasn't able to access. So as soon as everyone, this is after the evening after the refugees are shipped out to the Park Hotel. This is that swimming pool, the 1950s one that the nurses used to swim in.
Did you say it's 1950s?
Yeah, I think we decided it was 1955. 1958 originally.
question from Alistair. What did your daughter and your son make of the stay?
They were, they thought it was very luxurious. They each had a big bed and television. And I'm a bit of a Luddite. We actually don't have a television. But we do watch stuff on the computer screen, but also the internet was really good. But they were quite alarmed from walking around the building. I felt quite uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if they should be there or not. But the other thing is, during COVID,
go back and explain again. This is my grandmother died up on that floor. My best friend was born here. Matt's eldest daughter was born here. They had the baby's room, so we'd come and look at the baby. And my stomach pumped here. My brother's kneecap here. Had chewing gum. I moved out my brother's bum from here. Yeah, this was a local hospital. And that was, and then it had rave parties up there back in the day. And so. But there was a big morgue on site. They said I could please breathe. Yeah, pretty much. Breathe them before we die. Only I read one article, so it's not a good look. And so now they can get tourists back. And they as well. Melbourne's done.
But who would stay here anyway? It's just weird that it even existed.
No, when it's nice and it's sunny and it's happy and it's full of people coming to Melbourne from like Sydney and all over it. A colleague worked on Christmas Island and she knew the family, the Bilbao family. What's the Bilbao family that live in Queensland with the two daughters? But just how that was charter planes. Like they were flying charter planes from detention in Brisbane to Melbourne, back to Adelaide, and then the lawyer would ring them, they'd have to fly them back to Melbourne, and then back and
Oh wow. They've chucked out their beds.
That was the last video.
Thank you, Jackie. So maybe we can go back to the normal screen. I don't know if you can see. There's been a chain of correspondence about books. Jenna, thank you. Uncanny Architecture, Vidler, and Deming mentions Psycho Buildings, Kippenberger's book Psycho Buildings, which I'm not so familiar with. And Jasper, this reminds you of the Bonaventure. It's a little bit windy.
I'm just moving out of the wind, sorry. You've kind of seen the front and now we have daylight.
It looks like at the end of the film, you're basically at the same time of the morning as you are now.
except it's the other end of the day. It's evening, but this is actually the exact same spot.
Yeah.
This is where the beds are.
Jacqueline, you're quite quiet again. I don't know whether you can move closer to the mic. Thanks.
Okay. Can you see now? Is that better?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. When I look at the chat, it appears that it has an effect on the sound as well. So this is where we finished. This is where the hotel beds were. It's the third floor, and you get to see the light kind of refracting, or the front of the building is like that, kind of like. Jasper can speak on this, but understand that's something about the Bonaventura Hotel. And it has a particular gravity.
There's a nice observation from Pat in the chat box. Thank you, Pat, and also for your links. I'm just really struck by goodness me. I mean, Kafkaesque. Obviously, this is a cruel and unusual punishment, and particularly given that these. Did you say that they're mostly men?
They're all men.
They're all men, but they all have medical conditions.
They all have medical conditions.
Mm.
And it's uncertain as to whether or not they've been treated. There've been a few people who were taken to Australia too late for treatment before this happened. There was a young man in his 20s who died in a Brisbane hospital of septicemia from a small cut on his leg.
Mm.
And
are we live now? This is happening now.
Now, this is the entrance from before. Yeah. So this is completely transformed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or observations from those who've joined us this evening? Jasper?
Just to say, I just wanted to say thank you for showing. That was a really sort of surreal and quite almost like being in a horror movie, but sort of live.
I think
like a live tour through. Yeah.
You're right, Alistair, but it's a kind of deep psychological horror that has a sort of this kind of weird filmic kind of resonance. And it's not just the well-known films, is it? It's the kind of type of architecture that, I mean, the reason I mentioned the Bonaventure Hotel is because of the fortress nature of the building. And they share this kind of idea of a kind of reflective glass, small entryways, sort of architectural or structural processes of disorientation that force kind of uncertainty and anxiety in a building. But what seemed particularly interesting about this building is that it had these kind of what we were calling kind of parallel universes. These two very these coexistent lives taking place without sort of meeting one another. But somehow also in close proximity. It was very strange and eerie, and to think, and also to hear Jacqueline say that it was kind of not top of the range, but it's not, it's fairly expensive to stay there, and this sort of this good taste of, or the kind of renovation with these tasteful sort of murals on the wall and things like this, kind of quite really bizarre.
Art by the yard. So putting me in mind of the film Shock Corridor, Sam Fuller from 1963.
Jacqueline, where is, like, it seems so, are there reception staff there now, or like security? What is the?
Well, there's no one actually on reception. I was a bit surprised, but I heard someone coming, so I left. But yeah, no. So it does seem like it's kind of oddly quite vacant. There are people here. They're very much into themselves. Because we've only seen maybe 2 people since we've been here this morning. And they're not interested. Which is nice. There's a basketball court and the like, which are just around the corner behind here. It's unsure as to whether or not they were built for asylum 19, I think. Special permission to use them. You needed to show that you were really interested in the sport, and you weren't allowed to just sit outside and read outside. So they weren't used. And it looks like we've got all the new beds. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the old ones were taken away. These are the new. These are the deliver. This is the delivery of the new mattresses.
I think so. Yeah, they look like bed bases.
Ready for the next intake.
But this hotel is now this hotel is decommissioned, isn't it, as a place of detention for the refugees?
Yeah, they lost it. The contract wasn't renewed.
So it's sort of back to normal, as it were.
Yeah, the back to normal is quite strange here as well, because it is also used for housing, emergency housing,
All right.
and for people, I think, in release from prison too, in some places.
Have you seen Kenji's observation here that there's a Malmaison hotel in Oxford that was a prison and is now a hotel? I don't know if anyone knows anything about that.
No, I don't know anything about it. Thank you, Kenji. Thank you, everyone, for all the references too. I just find if I go to the chat, you can't hear me anymore. So
okay.
Steering clear.
I think it's also interesting that, like in the UK, when COVID hit, they immediately, one of the first things they did was house a lot of people, homeless people, in hotels in the UK. At least in London, I know that was the case. And it's just this, hotels are taking on this sort of weird role, and then to have you do this has just been quite amazing, actually, to think about.
Yeah, they have taken on that role here as well. So the people in the last video, Liz works in housing, and she said that COVID was the best thing ever, because suddenly homelessness was kind of fixed here briefly. But then at the same time, there was also people got money without having to prove themselves again and again too, for a short period of time. And the Park Hotel, where the asylum seekers were sent from here, I think, was also used for isolation of travellers. And there was a lot of comparisons between the isolation of tennis players after there were people on the plane with COVID. So isolation of tennis players here versus the isolation of people from Manus Island and the Park Hotel, which I think these two hotels are quite close to each other.
Just some more chat from Jenna. I think this is in relation to Kenji's comment about Oxford. So the Holloway Psychiatric Facility or maybe that is that Holloway prison as was, now luxury properties. But it's the duality of this place that is so unusual. And Laura says they have also been using hotels in Toronto for the people who are homeless, and also voluntary quarantine hotels for this, for those unable to isolate at home. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm conscious of the time now. We're sort of 20 past the hour. What do you think, Jasper? We could, I think we are over time. Thanking you, Jacqueline.
I think we probably have ran way over time, actually. We're normally quite strict, but because Simon's a much better chair than me, he's gone with the flow. Just to say before we go, Jackie, thanks again. It's been a really interesting, an amazing insight into this kind of weird and eerie architectural space. We're thinking about this for a long time, I think, and we have it recorded. So there'll be, I'm sure there'll be certainly there'll be things that we'll be watching over.
Yeah,
great
to speak to you again as well.
Yeah, great to see you again too. Thank you so much for having us and for everyone who's been involved. Simon and
thank you.
And also Kafumi and Liz, and thank you. And have everyone take care over there as well, and also people UK and in Toronto and wherever else you are. Stay safe. And
thank you.
Thank you so much for the references as well.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.